Americans have moved a lot in the last 2 years, and many have migrated either south or west. And those destinations also have the highest inflation rates in the United States. Welcome to the Financial Flow. Please like and subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to stay up on our latest videos. Inflation is more concerned with migration hotspots and how they changed during the pandemic. Phoenix, Atlanta, and Tampa are among the metro areas experiencing both high inflation and a pandemic surge in home purchases. Atlanta is one of the country's hotspots for inflation because people live there. Thus, lots of people are relocating to Atlanta. Phoenix had the highest inflation and San Francisco had the lowest. The National Consumer Price Index rose 8.3% in April 2022. As prices rise, they're effectively becoming poorer. When people arrive, they always find and say lines like, "Is this why inflation is so high?" in comparison to where they came from. It's more important than ever to keep an eye on how migration affects things like inflation. Here's where inflation is raging and how migration has affected it across the country. According to a Redfin analysis, many Americans relocated from expensive coastal cities to more affordable urban areas. However, this type of inflation migration trend appears to be novel. In 2021, we began to see an acceleration of migration driven by the pandemic into hotspots such as Tampa, Phoenix, and Atlanta. We really started to see the relationship expand and pull out, where hot migration destinations are driving large increases in inflation. According to Redfin's research, Phoenix has the highest inflation rate of any US metro area. Prices increased by 10.9% in the first quarter of 2022. According to Redfin, Phoenix was one of the most popular places to relocate. Housing is undoubtedly a major factor in this. Housing costs in Phoenix are up to 12% in the first quarter. The majority of Phoenix homeowners are watching the home price inflation with great interest. Home prices are now nearly double what they were 2 or 3 years ago. Atlanta has a thriving real estate market. There are a lot of people moving in. That has unquestionably increased demand for goods and services, particularly housing. Atlanta had the second highest inflation rate at 10.6%, and the Georgia metropolis also happened to be the 10th most popular migration destination. People have more work flexibility, and they are also looking for more affordable places compared to San Francisco and all other big metropolitan areas. Atlanta is still much more affordable, but that margin is definitely shrinking. The Sunbelt trend continues with Tampa, Florida, having the third highest inflation rate at 9.9% and is being the third most popular migration destination. Meanwhile, the city that saw the most people moving away was San Francisco, and San Francisco had the lowest inflation rate in Redfin's analysis at 5.2%. We know a lot of people that we've been tracking throughout the pandemic have been living in places like the Bay Area and moving and pouring into these hot migration destinations through the pandemic. The New York City area had the second lowest inflation rate at 5.4% and saw the third most migration away. And keep in mind, this is the price change, not price level. So we're not saying it's less expensive to live in New York. It's just that their current inflation rate is a little bit lower. Measuring inflation as the percentage change of the price index, it's the Consumer Price Index. So that is a basket of representative goods that people consume, and housing accounts for 1/3 of that basket. The Consumer Price Index, the CPI, is a measure of the average change over time in the prices paid by consumers, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That basket of goods is compiled from information provided by families and individuals about what they purchased, but the prices calculated from each item in the basket are weighed. And we have a sample of all sorts of goods and services that we collect data from every month. In about 75 areas across the country, we're collecting about 80,000 prices a month, so around 1 million per year. And we're using that to compute both overall price change, how much the price has risen for that whole market basket. So, if the CPI represents the average weighed prices of goods across the country, regional CPI measures have their own unique weighed baskets of prices, just slightly different ways. And that variation depends on the region, in which it can be different from place to place. Our data now show that there is significant inflation in every region of the country. with a little less in the Northeast and a little more in the South and West. The first place to look is sort of the way of gasoline and just the shelter or rental cost, because that's where we see the most variation. In the most recent 12-month period, gas prices in Phoenix are up over 40% because people buy a lot of cars. Some people buy used cars, which makes the prices of both of those increase nationally. But also here in Phoenix, that's been a big driver which makes people feel the pain at the pump. The gas price increase? That will increase the cost of many other things, and why you're going to see the food price and the overall other services. So that affects the cost of living. Even though the national housing market is showing signs of a cool down, Phoenix, Tampa, and Atlanta will remain attractive to out-of-town homebuyers, according to Redfin. I believe there has been a long-term migration in the United States toward the Sunbelt, South and West, and away from the Northeast, which is likely to continue. Homes are becoming less affordable more quickly in the Sunbelt metros than in coastal areas, which raises the question, does that affect migration? The answer is still not clear. It hadn't seemed to as of this point because prices are going up everywhere. Big factor that will drive both inflation and migration pattern is the housing market. When the mortgage rate is higher, it will cool down the housing market a little bit, right? But specifically, how the Atlanta housing market will move is hard to say. Redfin suggests that the financial benefits of moving to relatively affordable areas may eventually diminish. The cost of living might be really affordable to someone who is moving into the area, but for an existing resident who is already there, they might be feeling more of the pains if they hadn't had a strong income gain, and they are still facing higher prices. That's why wages are the key component that ties this together, especially for locals. Locals are simply priced out, and they have to either move much further out or to a place like Dallas instead, where it's relatively more affordable. If your wage and your salary cannot increase and keep up with the pace of inflation, your purchasing power will be hurt. Wage increases nationally were 5%. Phoenix wages were up to 6.4%. Now, that's of course not really keeping up with inflation. People will be hurt a lot more, and that is more pronounced and more of an issue in these hot migration destinations. What do we need to do to address that? Raising interest rates at the Fed is going to continue, and doing so will be one way to mitigate inflation in order to tame it. That's one strategy, and another strategy shows up with this analysis, that we need to build more homes in these hot migration areas to add housing supply, to also ease the burden of renters and that are experiencing growth in their rents. There is also transportation infrastructure that people could invest in to alleviate the burden of relying on cars in these car-dependent metro areas that are experiencing rapid growth, such as Atlanta and Phoenix. There's a lot of uncertainty in the economy about what is next. You have the issues related to labor, availability, labor shortages. When you have that kind of churn in the labor market, it puts upward pressure on wages. So, what exactly is the big unknown? Of course, there are several unknowns. Is there going to be a soft landing as a result of Federal Reserve policy? Is it going to be a disaster? Who can say? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. Have a good one.